Hello everyone, and welcome to my CBS Y&R Full Today channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Matt Clark is far from gone. The Young and the Restless spoilers reveal that the pens anticipate us to believe that Victor Newman has handed Matt Clark over to the Bobbies, and expects him to just sit there and rot in jail. Still, suckers know that this isn't the case. Matt wants vengeance and he'll be back to get it. Matt Clark dukes it out with Victor Newman. Matt was removing his rings to duke it out with Victor, who wants to show Matt who's superior. Victor had been warming up with his punching bag, staying to take his frustrations over Nick Newman and Noah Newman and their individual issues. Victor believes he's going to put Matt in his place before turning him over to the Bobbies. Matt latterly was revealed to be in jail after everything that had gone down. Everyone in Genoa City sounded to just accept that and go on. After all, everyone turned back to trying to stop Kane Ashby as if nothing ever happened. Unfortunately, Matt isn't going to be dismissed like he was no way a trouble. Victor Newman no way turns to the law. Victor has no way formally allowed the law to handle effects when someone was on his bad side, and he's not about to start now. Victor may have told everyone that Matt is in jail, but why would anyone believe him? Victor is just trying to set everyone's mind at ease while he deals with further critical matters. But has he misjudges Matt? Victor turning to the law would actually be a disappointment to any true Victor addict, because it's commodity he'd no way do. Also, there has not been any advertisement that Roger is done at Y&R because he doesn't feel to be going anywhere. Nope, Victor has other plans and they've nothing to do with the GCPD. Nick Newman may need Matt Clark. Let's be honest. Nick is falling into a huge medicine dependence that could beget a great deal of issues for everyone involved. Nick further than likely knows that Matt isn't in jail and could turn to him when he cannot get the capsules he needs. Nick knows that Matt has an everlasting force of fentanyl. Matt also has his crooked Bobby, who could be veritably useful in this situation. Nick will be right where Matt wants him when he cannot get the medicines he needs to feed his dependence. Nick would be the ultimate reason that Matt escapes and lives to attack another day. After all, having Nick as one of his medicine guests will be a huge plus for Matt. However, Nick could cover Matt for times, if Nick doesn't get off the drugs. Did Roger Howarth's Matt Clark leave Young and Restless? Young and Restless would have us believe that Victor beat the filling out of Matt Clark and also handed him over to the authorities to sit in captivity for the rest of his life. But we know more. The last we saw Matt Clark, he'd removed his rings in medication to bare-knuckle brawl with the Black Knight. Victor, who had warmed up on the heavy bag, was brewing over Matt in a scene fraught with pressure. Not a word was spoken, and that was the end of the occasion. But if commodity Victor fighting Matt wasn't questionable enough, what came next was indeed more outlandish. Young and Restless observers were stunned when it was revealed in passing discussion that Matt Clark was in jail. As we were all yelling, "What?" at our television defenses and bias, the characters in Genoa City simply accepted this as fact and carried on. Indeed, more astonishing. Why? Well, we're getting to that. When was the last time you saw Victor Newman let law enforcement handle anything? Anything at all? You haven't. Because he doesn't. In fact, he goes out of his way, and did so throughout this entire plot, to keep the popo in the dark so he can see to it that the problem is excluded on his terms. However, we'd be gobsmacked if Victor actually handed Matt over to the authorities and walked down. Not to mention plaintively disappointed. What a lame, off-screen ending to this villain's return. There's been no big advertisement about Roger Howarth concluding his bow, which makes us all the more certain there's further to this story and that we haven't seen the last of Matt Clark. However, it'll be a means to an end. If it turns out Matt actually is in jail, commodity will be that will lead to him getting out. He does have a friend and associate who's a crooked Bobby. She could come in handy, but more likely, Nick's lozenge dependence will come into play. There's a reason he's sporting a leather jacket and a bad disposition recently, and it has everything to do with the little baggie of fentanyl he set up in his pocket. Once Nick's croaker cuts him off of his tradition anodynes and he dips into the lawless medicines, if he hasn't formally, it'll be great news for Matt. Nick, we're prognosticating, will come so hopeless to score further fentanyl once he's hooked that he'll go looking to make a deal with Clark. However, he'll find him and the troubles will start up again. If Nick discovers he's not in jail, maybe Victor has a dungeon in the new estate. No, we haven't seen the last of Matt Clark. Soap's compendiums. It can't end like this. Still, it's this no villain ever truly disappears in Genoa City, especially not one who still has untreated business with Victor Newman, if the young and the restless has tutored observers anything over the decades. That's why the idea that Matt Clark has been still hauled off to jail and forgotten feels less like check and more like the calm before a disastrous storm. The pens may want us to believe that Victor Newman handed Matt over to the authorities, dusted off his hands, and returned to more burning matters like Kane Ashby's rearmost chaos, but longtime suckers no more. This story doesn't end with iron bars and off-screen dialogue. It ends with vengeance, blood ties, dependence, and a reckoning that will ripple through the Newman family in ways no bone sees coming. The last time we truly saw Matt Clark, the moment was heavy with imminence and silence. No dramatic music. No grand speeches. Just two men standing on contrary sides of a room, both curled like bloodsuckers. Matt sluggishly removed his rings designedly, symbolically, preparing for a bare-knuckle fight with Victor Newman, the so-called Black Knight of Genoa City. Victor, for his part, had formally worked himself into a controlled fury, pounding down at a heavy bag, channelizing times of frustration over Nick Newman's tone-destructive helical and Noah Newman's emotional distance. This wasn't just about Matt. This was about Victor asserting dominance, reminding the world, and himself, that he's still the most important man in the room. Also nothing. No punch thrown on screen. No winner declared. Rather, observers were latterly told, nearly casually, that Matt Clark was in jail. Just like that. No arrest scene. No courtroom drama. No mugshot. Genoa City simply accepted it as fact and moved on, turning its collaborative outrage toward Kane Ashby as if Matt had no way was at all. And that, maybe further than anything, is what makes the entire situation feel wrong. Because Victor Newman doesn't turn people over to the law. He no way has. Victor Newman doesn't trust the GCPD. He doesn't calculate on judges, prosecutors, or captivity walls. When someone crosses him, when they hang his family, his conglomerate, or his heritage, Victor handles it himself. He manipulates. He buries secrets. He destroys lives still and efficiently. The law is commodity he uses after the fact, when it suits his narrative, not as a result. So the idea that Victor suddenly decided to do the right thing and let Matt rot in jail isn't just out of character, it's laughable. More likely, Victor told everyone what he wanted them to believe. By spreading the story that Matt Clark is safely locked down, Victor buys himself time. Time to deal with Kane. Time to manage Nick's unraveling. Time to cover Nicky from yet another emotional blow. But in doing so, Victor may have made a fatal misapprehension, because Matt Clark isn't the kind of man who disappears still, and he clearly isn't the kind who forgives being lowered. Still, it may not be a captivity cell at each, if Matt truly is being held nearly. Suckers have formally begun assuming about commodity far darker a private holding position, an off-the-books arrangement, or indeed a non-fictional dungeon hidden within Victor's new estate. It wouldn't be the first time Victor took justice into his own hands, and it wouldn't be the last. But keeping Matt alive, contained yet breathing, could prove to be Victor's biggest mistake. Because Matt Clark doesn't just want freedom. He wants revenge. And the most dangerous thing about Matt isn't his fists or his temper, it's his tolerance. Matt knows how Genoa City works. He knows people get distracted. He knows head slap. He knows that while everyone is concentrated on Kane Ashby's implosion, Nick Newman is still falling piecemeal, twisting deeper into a dependence that could destroy him fully. And Matt knows exactly how to exploit that weakness. Nick Newman isn't well. The leather jacket. The station. The reckless edge. These aren't fashion choices or mood swings, they are advising signs. Nick's reliance on tradition anodynes has formally crossed the line, and once his croaker inescapably cuts him off, despair will set in. That's when Nick will flash back commodity he wishes he could forget. Matt Clark always has a force. An endless bone. Fentanyl. Illegal. Deadly. Important. And Matt doesn't work alone. He still has connections. Dangerous bones. Including a crooked Bobby. Who knows how to make problems vanish and doors still unleash. That single supporter could be the key to Matt's escape, whether his in a real jail or one of Victor's shadow incarcerations. All Matt needs is influence, and Nick Newman may come the ultimate log-rolling chip. Still, pain and emotional collapse push him too far. He may seek Matt out himself, if Nick becomes hopeless enough, if pull out. And in doing so, Nick could come the very reason Matt walks free. Victor Newman, the man who prides himself on controlling every outgrowth, may end up watching his own son undo everything he tried to cover. And formally Matt is free? Nothing stops him. Matt won't come off swinging hectically. He'll come back calculated. Strategic. He'll use Nick's dependence as insurance. He'll use secrets as currency. He'll force Victor into insolvable choices: save your son, or stop your adversary. And knowing Victor, those choices will tear him piecemeal from the inside. There's also one veritably important detail suckers shouldn't ignore. There has been no sanctioned advertisement that Roger Howarth is leaving The Young and the Restless. No farewell interviews. No ending statements. No homage occurrences. In the world of day TV, that silence speaks volumes. Villains don't exit still when their story is untreated, and Matt Clark's story is anything but complete. An off-screen jail judgment isn't an ending. It's a placeholder. And if Matt really is behind bars right now, it won't be for long. Commodity will be a deal, a treason, a relapse that cracks the door open. Once that door opens, the chaos will return tenfold. Genoa City will formally again find itself under siege, and this time, the damage won't be limited to bruises and broken alliances. Lives will be permanently altered. Victor Newman believes he's won. Genoa City believes the trouble is over. But Matt Clark is still breathing. And as every young and the restless addict knows, as long as a villain is breathing, the story is no way truly finished. The taradiddle that Matt Clark was taking care of spread through Genoa City with shocking ease. It slipped into exchanges at society, muttered in hushed tones at crimson lights, and was accepted without question in the Newman living room like a accessible verity no bone. Wanted to challenge. Victor Newman said Matt was in jail, and for utmost people in city, that was enough. Victor Newman's word has always carried weight, occasionally further than substantiation, occasionally further than reality itself. But falsehoods erected on convenience infrequently hold, and this bone was formally cracking beneath the face. Victor didn't advertise Matt's arrest with pride. He didn't boast. He didn't indeed loiter on the subject. That alone was suspicious. Victor Newman isn't a man who downplays his palms. When he wins, he makes sure the world knows it. But this time, he offered only a vague evidence and diverted attention away, toward Kane Ashby, toward commercial pitfalls, toward the endless fires that always feel to burn around the Newman conglomerate. It was as if he wanted Matt Clark cancelled from memory, wiped clean like an inconvenient citation. And that should have scarified everyone. Because Matt Clark doesn't vanish still. He festers. He waits. And most importantly, he learns. Wherever Matt was being held, whether it was a licit jail cell, a shadowy private installation, or commodity far more minatory arranged by Victor himself, Matt had time. Time to renewal every moment of demotion. Time to relive the silence in that room when he removed his rings and set to fight Victor Newman, only for the battle to be stolen from him. Time to let the rage settle into commodity colder, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous. Matt didn't want a fistfight presently. He wanted control. Victor, meanwhile, believed he'd everything under control. He always does. From the outside, it looked like business as usual: meetings, calls, power plays. But beneath that iron countenance, Victor was unraveling. Nick's jest eroded at him relentlessly. The signs were insolvable to ignore now. The mood swings, the perversity, the reckless opinions. Victor had seen this ahead, in different forms, with different people. Dependence doesn't always advertise itself loudly. Occasionally it whispers, slipping into routines and pretenses until it owns you fully. Nick claimed he'd effects handled. He always did. He told Victor he was fine, that the anodynes were temporary, that the stress would pass. Victor didn't believe him, not entirely, but he wanted to. Fathers occasionally choose denial when the verity feels too disastrous to face. And Victor, for all his ruthlessness, has always been most vulnerable when it comes to his children. That vulnerability is exactly what Matt Clark was counting on. Nick's croaker. ultimately did what Victor stressed most: cut him off. The tradition stopped. The professional concern was clear. Reliance had come egregious. Nick jounced, agreed, promised he'd manage, but once the door unrestricted, fear set in. The pain came back first. Also the restlessness. Also the hopeless clarity that comes when your body realizes commodity it depended on is suddenly gone. That was when the study surfaced. Matt Clark. Nick tried to push it down. He told himself it was insolvable. Matt was in jail. That's what everyone said. That's what Victor said. But Nick had lived long enough in Genoa City to know better than to trust a story just because it was accessible. And there was commodity differently, commodity darker, lugging at him memory. He flashed back the little baggie. Flashed back how fluently Matt had produced it. Flashed back the quiet confidence with which Matt had assured him there would always be more. Despair makes recreance of the strongest people. It bends morals. It blurs lines. And Nick Newman, formerly so proud of doing effects else than his father, set up himself walking a path Victor knew all too well, one paved with negotiations that feel small at first but grow monstrous over time. Nick didn't go looking for Matt right down. He tested the waters, asked questions, made calls he shouldn't have made. And that was when he realized commodity nipping no bone could confirm Matt Clark's incarceration. There were no public records, no sanctioned statements, just Victor's word passed along like philosophy. That absence spoke louder than any evidence ever could. Somewhere in Genoa City, or just outside it, Matt Clark was alive, apprehensive, and staying. And Matt, for his part, had been preparing for this moment. Matt's crooked contact within law enforcement had kept him informed. Still. Precisely. Information dropped in sluggishly, but it was enough. He knew Nick was twisting. He knew Victor was detracted. He knew Kane Ashby's chaos had excessively shifted attention down from him. It was the perfect storm. When Nick eventually made contact, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some dark alley battle. It was subtle, a communication passed through interposers, a meeting arranged in a place no bone would question. Matt didn't rush. He let Nick stew. Let the despair edge. When they eventually came face to face, Matt looked different, calmer, thinner, but far more dangerous. Nick slightly honored him. Matt didn't bewail. He didn't hang. He simply heeded. That was the most unsettling part. He let Nick talk himself into the corner he'd formerly painted. Every admission, every earthquake of need, every hint of fear, it was all information. Currency. You're not supposed to be free, Nick eventually said, his voice slightly steady. Matt smiled, not wide, not cruel. Just knowing. And you're not supposed to be then, he replied vocally. That was the moment Nick understood how poorly he'd misestimated. He hadn't just set up Matt Clark. He'd stepped directly into Matt's trap. From that point on, everything accelerated. Matt didn't demand fidelity outright. He didn't ask Nick to betray Victor, yet. He offered help. Force. Relief. The kind of relief Nick couldn't get anywhere differently. And in return, Matt asked for nearly nothing. Small favors. Information. Updates. Innocent effects that felt inoffensive in insulation but ruinous when erected together. Victor tasted commodity was wrong before he ever had evidence. Fathers like Victor develop instincts sharper than Shanks. He noticed Nick avoiding him. He noticed the shifts, the unforeseen calm followed by changeable volatility. He brazened Nick, demanded answers, but Nick veered, just like Victor formerly had in his own darkest moments. And also came the consummation that stupefied Victor to his core. Matt Clark wasn't gone. Worse, Matt Clark was nearer than ever. Victor began digging. Still. Aggressively. He pulled strings, called in favors, leaned on connections he hadn't used in times. And what he uncovered made his blood run cold wave. The narrative he'd constructed, the taradiddle he'd told Genoa City was unraveling. Whether through arrogance or overconfidence, Victor had undervalued Matt's reach. And now, Matt was using Victor's own son as influence. That was insupportable. Victor didn't fear. He no way does. Fear is weakness. But he did commodity far more dangerous, he resolved. Resolved to finish what he'd started, no matter the cost. This was no longer about control or character. This was about family. And Victor Newman has destroyed entire lives for far lower. But Matt Clark was ready. He anticipated Victor's moves. He combated before Victor indeed acted. Information blurted at the worst possible times. Deals went sideways. Trust fractured. And Nick, caught between reliance and fidelity, began to crack under the pressure. The guilt came unsupportable. The faucets piled too high. And Matt, ever patient, awaited for the moment Nick would eventually break. Because when Nick breaks, everything breaks. The verity is, Matt no way wanted to beat Victor with his fists. He wanted to strike him emotionally. To turn his heritage into his downfall. To make Victor watch as his own style's secretiveness, manipulation, control, were used against him through the person he loved most. And as Genoa City lofted toward that ineluctable collision, one thing came sorrowfully clear. This wasn't a comeback bow. This was a war. Matt Clark wasn't finished. Nick Newman was in peril. And Victor Newman was about to face the one adversary he has no way been suitable to master. The consequences of his own choices.